Hey, everybody. Welcome to Beta Academy's Pandemic Podcast, episode 17. I am your host, Nakapan, and our co-host here, Coach Louis Candelas. Of course, he's always monitoring the airwaves. If you have any questions today, please do put them in the comments. You're probably going to have a lot of questions today because we have very special guests, one and only our resident, the good doctor, Dr. Reginald Robinson. We call him Dr. Reggie. Reggie is board certified cardiologist. And he is a longtime martial arts practitioner, longtime friend of the student of the academy, always helping out with the events, making sure we all stay safe. Anything we have, we always kind of just walk over to him. He is the resident guru medical specialist. How you doing, Dr. Reggie?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on, Nak and Lou. It's always a pleasure. I miss you guys.
Oh, we miss you too, man. We miss you too. We're very looking forward to getting everybody back training, which hopefully you can shed some light on that too. You being in the front lines, in the hospitals, seeing what's going on out there. So it's gonna be very interesting to get your perspective. I'm sure everybody kind of will have some questions too. Dr. Reggie, would you say you've been practicing martial arts for a long time now? Would you give us a little bit about your martial arts background, how it's affected your life?
Well, roughly 6 years ago, I'd never done any martial arts before. And what initiated it was I just went through a divorce and I said, okay, I'm never doing that thing again. I'm never, ever getting married again. So, I just focused in on work and my daughter and my son. And somewhere that I saw, I don't know if it's online or something, that beta popped up. And it just happened to be less than from me. So I took the free class, did the Muay Thai and the Jiu-Jitsu. And right after I finished that class, I signed up for both. And since I had, a lot of time on my hand and the focus, and it was probably the biggest thing or the best thing I could have done for myself from a mental health perspective, from a health perspective. I was 46, now I'm 52. To start picking up Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai at age 46 when you haven't done that, that's a task. But I think I started doing both of them probably 3 or 4 days a week. Yeah. I would alternate, do the Jiu-Jitsu, do the Muay Thai, and that process was, I think it was a great process for me, getting to know a lot of people, a whole new community. I felt like the Jiu-Jitsu community and the Muay Thai community were a little different, but had the same concept and same goal in mind. And I think if anyone's even thinking about something to do, that would be a good start for them.
I always try to preach, the completeness of martial art and self-defense, and trying to bring both the grappling and the striking. And so, yes, I find sometimes there are people that gravitate to one or the other, and it's always good to see people who are willing to do both and really excel at both. I mean, I see you in class. You spar in Muay Thai just as much as you spar in Jiu-Jitsu. You have a good time with it too. So, I see you beating up those young kids, and sometimes things get a little heated, but you know what?
I know you'd always keep an eye on everyone, knocking. I was going to talk about the fight or flight response, right? We know we all have that fight or flight response, and I've learned from you and people like Lewis and folks that have been doing it a long time ago. Sometimes you need the fight response, and sometimes you need the flight response, right? Initially, the white belt level, the early on Muay Thai level, you have that fight response a lot of time. If you're an alpha person, my science mind is working, and I'm trying to look at everything from a logical perspective on even how I do Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai. And if someone punches you in the face a little harder, then it's going to be automatic. Either you're a fighter or you're a flight person. And over time, you have to learn how to balance that fight and flight response out, because that adrenaline is going to hit you. You can't teach getting punched in the face. You can teach jab, cross, hook, but you can't teach getting punched in the face. And once you get punched in the face, all that goes out of the window unless you really drill those muscle memories in and things like that. So I think that's sort of a big part, is that fight or flight response, and how you can use that in martial arts, Jiu-Jitsu, knowing when to hold them, know when to fold them. You would say, Dr. Reggie, okay, I saw that. We'll go ahead, slow it down, because, some people get a little aggressive, and it's a natural response to go right back at them. But the more you learn, you can sort of, okay, I'll back off and let this person realize what I'm doing and not respond in kind. And eventually they'll figure it out. But over time, I always look at you out the corner of my eye, and you either nod or shake. Go ahead and give it to them. That's when they don't listen, So
the psychology of training martial arts, I think, is very important too. That well, individually, like, you're expressing yourself, through martial art and through combat, which is very interesting. And also this is where the psychological aspects come in, that, you do get hit. So, what is your response? And sometimes also that's, you almost want a big brother or big sister, that person. You're like, okay, well, let me show you what's going on. And sometimes you can do it in a way where, you're able to do it look almost effortlessly, which also takes the wind out of your partner's sails too. And they're like, man, this guy's just like teeing me up now, and I don't know what to do. So very, very interesting. And that's one thing I really love about you training, Dr. Reggie, is you're not afraid to back down. It doesn't matter what's going on. And, but so therefore, that's why the instructors are there, to make sure that everybody's always, we're there to help out, And,
that's an interesting thing, because especially in jiu-jitsu, people talk about it all the time. When there's that spazzy white belt that's super athletic and he's roughing up all the other white belts, and then they want us to go in and beat them up, which is really fun to do, to beat up those types. But then something that we've realized is, when we do go beat them up, they think that's how we do things around here. And then they start beating up on other people when they get, and it's like, no. So that's something we've kind of, we don't do so much, but when we do it, it's in a controlled fashion, and it's not just to beat people up anymore. Because a lot of times what happens is they'll say that, like, well, I get beat up all the time, so that's why I beat up. And it's like, no. So that's something we've slowly changed. That's always been a rough thing. And one more thing, it's crazy, Doc, that you started at 46 and you were ready to go. And I have 30-year-olds that are like, I'm too old for training. And I can't believe it when I see it. Can't believe it.
Yeah. That when you mention, if you go rough on one person that's being rough on another, they elevate it. But the opposite can also occur. You can break their spirit.
Yep.
Right. So if you get in there and crush them, they're not thinking that a purple belt just crushed me. They're thinking about another human being just crushed me. And then that's going to break their spirit of wanting to train. They may even stop coming. So that's the balance that you'll have to have of, bullying a bully, or just realizing where that person's coming from. Some people are just naturally, I wouldn't want to say aggressive. They may not have the finesse. And I see, as even with myself, Knock would always say, you don't have to use your muscles. One of the young guys, like, Dr. Reggie, you got that old man strength, but you don't have to always use your strength a lot. So some people don't know how to turn that off. They're always on 1,000 the whole time. And it's knowing when to flip that switch off to allow them to, and you guys do a great job with explaining how you flip that switch off. Don't go 1,000% every time. You need to back off, and that person actually falls into your, 50% mode.
And we have the mat enforcers, so we'd be perfectly clear about that. We do have the people that are willing to get in there all the time. But the important thing also is to know what the intent is. If that person's intent on getting revenge or hurting you, like, this person can feel that too. And so therefore, like, they'll have to answer back. And as you said, either fight or flight. Sometimes the third response is just freeze, whereas if a person is trying to show you that, hey, look, like, we can do this without hurting each other. And I can do it in a way that, it's almost, it's nothing. It's almost like it's magic to that person. You're holding them down and using no strength. It's almost effortless. And this person's be like, you know what? I want to try to learn that, because, that to me, if I can do that to somebody, then, perhaps I've learned something, but if you beat them up and they're all like, getting all bruised up and bloody, and then now they're like, oh, this is something else, Right. But that takes practice, and therefore, we have to choose the right enforcer for the right situation. Oftentimes, the right tool.
My journey was sort of interesting. I believe my first year was just being defensive the whole time, because I was older, I was smaller than a lot of people in there. And, I didn't conceptualize that, okay, yeah, this guy's 50 pounds heavier than me. And yeah, and he's a blue belt or a purple belt, and he should be dominating me. But in my mindset, I'm like, this is another human being. I can't let that happen. And
Yeah.
that's when you start getting your injuries. I mean, probably first month there, I have a little knot right here that I got a grade 1 separation from a purple belt. Probably like with my first few weeks from a triangle choke. As you're pulling that over, that AC joint can pop right out. And so we have to be mindful of what we're doing. And as a friend of mine who's an orthopedic surgeon here, he's a black belt in Taekwondo. Also does I think I introduced you to him now, Dr. Duogi. He says,
Yeah.
Reg, you just need to know how to tap out. And I don't think we learn that until later on when stuff started to hurt.
Yep.
Sometimes you don't get a chance to tap out, like when I was rolling with Coach Isaac once. And, of course, he's probably at a brown belt level at that point and probably a good 40 or 50 pounds heavier than I am. I'm 155 good on a wet day. And he just used the pressure technique. And I didn't know what he was doing. He just kept sliding up. And before I know it, he had my feet up in the air. I looked up and said, did I pass out? He said, yeah, you pass out, doc, but you'll be okay. he had my legs up in the air, shaking my legs. So learning how to tap and learning the process of.
Was that the first time you ever passed out?
Yes.
Okay. But now you're not afraid of it, right?
No, I'm not afraid of it. And that's why I started with saying, my whole first year was being defensive. Yeah. And if I got caught in enough things, I learned how to get out of those things. So the more triangle chokes you get in, the more arm bars and guillotines and all of that, then you learn how to become defensive. And you also learn how, if someone's doing it on you now, like, okay, I feel it. This is actually where they're putting the pressure point, and this is how they're doing their maneuvers, their locks. I need to do that because you can't see it on a video. It's once you feel it on yourself, that's probably the best teacher.
Yeah. Quick shout out to Dr. Diogi. He is like a resident. He fixes everybody, especially in the martial arts community. So a lot of judo players. When I was training judo at Georgetown Judo, everybody would always recommend us to Dr. Diogi. I think for Professor Noah, he's fixed him, done a few surgeries on him, and it's great because he doesn't always recommend surgeries. He's always trying to give you some other ways to come back to training. And he understands, because a lot of times I had a knee surgery one time, a meniscus repair, and my doctor really didn't know a whole lot about. He wasn't a sports doctor, although he did a lot of surgeries on athletes, And I was like, so what's up with the knees? Like, well, you're never going to be able to, kick or jump or do that again. And I was like, wait a minute, but he doesn't even know what I do. Like, I train jiu-jitsu. Can I do jiu-jitsu? Can I do Muay Thai? And he's like, they never do that again. He's like, but he doesn't even know what it is.
Right.
So, it's good to know somebody. And it's good to have a lot of doctors who are doing physical sports, particularly something as hard as, Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu. So it's great to have more people like you, Dr. Reggie, and people like Dr. Diogi in our community helping us out and making sure we can get back to training safely.
Yeah, he also is the doc of the Wizards, the Capitals, and the Nats.
Yep. Now I've known him for almost 20 years. I remember going to his office before, and it's completely different now. Now he's got like a whole bunch of assistants and aides next to him, and they're all like asking him and looking at him like, what do we do? He says like two things, and then he walks off. And so, but they all work. So I'm very, very, very grateful for y'all. Now, if someone were to see you, it's hard to see you, but you're a very, I would say, fit looking doctor. That's to me, that's something that is not common. I would say, at least my experience in your industry. Would you say that's a good assessment, or?
I agree. I mean, you really have to try to find balance because, I'm at my office now. I just got up early at 6 to go see patients over in the hospital and to get ready to come in and talk to you guys. So you have to know what's important. We're preaching to people about lifestyle modifications. I always tell people, talk to them about what's called TLC, total lifestyle change. And without total lifestyle change, all the stuff that we're actually doing for patients really doesn't matter. And I give the analogy of a car. Most people who drive, they won't put just any gas in their car. I'll ask my patients, they really don't understand what I'm asking them at first. I'm like, what kind of gas do you put in your car? Oh, it requires high test gasoline. Like, well, why don't you put diesel in there? No, it'll break it down, and it doesn't call for that. Like, okay, how many times do you stop before you put something in your mouth to think about what's going in your body? You know, treat your body as your Bentley, right? You can't go to Advanced Auto Part and get your new heart or your new kidney or your new brain when you've had a stroke. So getting that concept that not only what we're telling to the patients, but we actually have to take it in ourselves, because if we're not healthy, we can't help anyone. And it's really about trying to find that balance, especially in this time and age. You know, so many people have, you know, you hear about people putting on weight over the winter time. Now it's the COVID weight, right? Because no one's out, no one's active. And I see more people walking, a lot more people that are walking because they're not at work or they're telecommuting. And a lot of the docs are telecommuting. So I do 3 days a week from home, and I don't like it that much, because normally when I'm in the office, I'm seeing people, I'm moving. You know, my staff will look at me and they'll see me stretching or doing squats with because I have my computer on this up and down desk. So it's important that we practice what we preach if you want a longer life in this game, because you're not doing anything physical, but it's mentally challenging. Yeah. And I find the working out and the exercise as a part of therapy, a total body workout, total body therapy for my mind, for my body, you know, for your vitality. You know, if, you know, since we had a young person join us, I'll just call it the vitality. That all comes into play with you. The more fit you are, those things help. And I believe in natural things before pharmacologic things first. And part of that natural rejuvenation and process is working out. Since we've been off on this COVID thing, I've been doing the Peloton. I bought Peloton for my wife, and they also have an app. So in the evening, after I've been at home, we go through Walk Park, and we have the music playing. Someone's talking us through it. It tracks your steps, gives you amount of, you know, the number of miles that you've accomplished. They'll tell you to pick up the pace. You know, anyone can do 10 minutes or 20 minutes of something.
You often, a lot of times our conversations, you always mention the sick care system that we have as opposed to a healthcare system. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that, and, you know, how we can be healthier, and, you know, what your opinion is on the healthcare system or the sick care system?
Right. Yeah. I love to call it the sick care system, because most people don't present until they're sick. Healthcare really doesn't pay for many preventive things. They pay for, you know, they do in the sense where you go get your colonoscopy, your mammograms, now CAT scans for people who are smoking. But say nutritionists or physical therapy or exercise things, by the time you're in the healthcare system or in the hospital, you're already sick. So it probably takes,
those things are not covered by insurance, is what you're saying, like those nutrition and those types of things.
Right. You know, you have to fight for it and battle. And I think if there could be a comprehensive plan where it's hard to really do the nutrition thing, because you have 1,000 different nutrition plans. You know, you have people on the Atkins diet, you have people on South Beach diet, you have people on, you know, all these different plans. But I think being more preventative helps you to delay or prevent further outcomes. So 80% of, you know, some cardiovascular diseases can probably be prevented or decreased by lifestyle modification. You know, that's probably the tip of the iceberg when you think about what impacts health. So there are social determinants of health that come into play. I mentioned this when I did this mayor panel a few weeks ago. Someone asked me, one of the reporters asked, so what do you tell people when they don't believe that young people can have heart disease and the fallacies of just being obese? That plays a huge role. But when you look at healthcare, you have to look at the social determinants, which are housing. Where do you live? The environment. What's the air quality? Do you have cockroaches? Do you have mold in the house? Policing. Is it unsafe in your neighborhood? Can you actually go out and exercise and you know, feel safe? Transportation. How many buses does it take you to get to a grocery store or to your appointment? Are you an old lady that has to carry like several bags on the bus to get to a grocery store? So all of those things probably are the base of the pyramid when you look at the things that contribute to health outcomes. So from what we can do is being more active, If you have some limitations, like arthritic problems, back problems, you're a senior, maybe get one of your family members to buy you those little foot pedals. You've seen those foot pedals. You can just drop down on the ground and pedal when a commercial comes on, or put them up on the table and do that. Or if you have a chair that's not too low, you can get up, stand up, and sit down and use some squats while commercials come on. Because one of the things that happen to our seniors is they lose muscle mass. And one of the first things to go is their core, right? If they're not using that core strength, they're not able to get up, their posture is bad. And then that's the downhill for them when they can't become mobilized. So just doing simple things of holding onto their walker and going up and down on their tiptoes, or getting in a chair and putting it in front of your television. And as a cue, when the commercial comes on, just stand up, sit down, or do some leg raises. So anyone can do that.
Yeah, my grandmother is about to turn 84 this next week, and I'm experiencing those same things that you're saying with her. She lives with me in the house, and we're trying to make sure, that she stays active. It's very hard because ever since she quit working at 75, she didn't want to retire. But after she retired and stopped going to work, like she's been, sitting most of the time in bed, and, so I got to get her up and get out. But lately she's had a few falls and where she can't physically get up without someone to have her to be there. And I think that this is a challenge for the elderly, but when it comes to, I guess, people that are younger, our age, younger than that, it's almost something that they take for granted, that we don't need to work out. We can just kind of go about our day and everything will be fine. And then it catches up with us at a later point.
Right. So I people look at body size and say, oh, that's a fat person over there, and there's a skinny person, they must be healthy. There's some skinny fat people out there.
Yeah.
Right.
This is true. So when you're talking about heart disease, like what is this I think it's the number 2 leading cause of death? Is it lung cancer is the first, or what? How does it?
Number 1, when you look at cardiovascular disease, if you lump all the cancers together, then they may be neck and neck. But now we can, there are 2 times that cardiovascular disease probably wasn't the number 1 cause, 1918 and probably now. And there are 2 pandemics, right?
Oh.
So over 150,000 cases of deaths in this country from COVID. And we don't know the long-term impact of it. There are some inflammatory processes that can affect blood vessels. So you start hearing about people getting blood clots in the legs and the lungs. You start hearing about effects of the heart itself. So that they have surpassed cardiovascular disease. At least 1918, that was the first plague. This is the second plague. But with cardiovascular disease, that's a wastebasket term of a bunch of things. Heart attacks, include stroke in there, add hypertension. You can add diabetes. So if you have diabetes, what we call a cardiac equivalent, meaning that you have the same 20% 10-year risk of having some cardiac event, like a heart attack, ending up on dialysis, stroke, or losing your limb. So diabetes is the leading cause of all of those things. So we have to lump all those in. I even like to lump obesity in there, because obesity can sometimes lead to most of those things. They travel in the same car. You're overweight, you might have sleep apnea. Most people may not know what sleep apnea is. When that neck size starts to get like 17 inches, you snore, people tell you stop breathing, or you wake yourself up from breathing. That can increase risk of arrhythmias or high blood pressure or sudden death.
I went and I took one of those sleep studies. Covered by my insurance. It was the strangest thing I'd ever done. Like, yeah, you can come over 9 o'clock and sleep. I'll wake you up at 5. I was like, okay. So they put a whole bunch of electrodes in my head, greased me up. I had to kind of sleep sitting up. And then turns out I have sleep apnea too. And they wanted to give me a CPAP machine, but I was like, let me just try to figure this out. Maybe I got to change some diet or something like that, because I don't want to buy this expensive machine and try to sleep with it on my face. I know I'm not going to do it consistently.
What's your neck size?
17, I think.
Let's start working on getting that down. Also work on, one of these things you can train yourself is get you a t-shirt that has a pocket in it. You can put a little tennis ball in there and just wear it backwards. So every time you try to sleep on your back, it's uncomfortable. So it trains you to sleep on your side. As you're sleeping on your side, your jaw moves forward.
Okay. Yep.
I'll have more of the apnea when you lay back like this. Now the jaw goes back like that. So apnea, actually, you stop breathing. And when you stop breathing, your oxygen goes down. And what does that do? It's a fire alarm. That's sending your brain the actual fire alarm. So it's going to produce a lot of adrenaline to wake you up. So it may wake you all the way up, or it may wake you up out of a deep sleep into a lighter sleep. So the next day you wake up, you might be more fatigued. Your mouth is dry because you've been breathing in and out of your mouth. That adrenaline is still elevated throughout the day. So your blood pressures can be all over the place. You can have palpitations. And that's what Reggie White had, a football player, died of cardiac arrest or sudden death from ventricular arrhythmias. It can lead to atrial fibrillation or those fast heartbeats as well. So I would say, cutting out the carbs for a little while, all the white foods in the diet, and not and picking you maybe like 3 or 4 days a week where it's just going to be your plant-based day. No meats, chicken, or fish. And for the fruits, just look at berries versus the sugary fruits like oranges, mangoes, bananas. Just add that in there and see if that works.
Careful. Once you start telling people don't eat meat, they go crazy.
Well, that's why I did a hybrid, right? So, picking 3 or 4 days a week where most people can do that. Once I tell people that they should become a vegetarian, I'm not a vegetarian. So once you tell people that, it's like the Charlie Brown teacher, wah, 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 wah. They don't hear anything you're saying after that. So you have to meet people where they are and really be realistic. Most people won't do that. They won't become a vegetarian because it's not natural for us. We have canines here. Canines are for ripping into stuff. And so over evolution, we do certain things. But I believe most people can probably, if they need to, and it's going to be something that's going to help their life, like bringing weight down, controlling diabetes, controlling blood pressures, you can make that hybrid, picking you 3 or 4 days to be plant-based. It's the white foods, the starches, nothing wrong with them per se, but, they convert to sugars pretty quickly and we store them as fats. So, a lot of people, African-Americans, Latinos, Asian, we love our foods, and a lot of it is based on starches, right? And your parents have always told you, your grandparents have always told you, you better eat everything on your plate, right? So we got to get smaller plates, right? No, we don't need the Thanksgiving size plate for every meal, right? You can get smaller plates and then stack it up. Another point could be is picking your main course. Most of us, when we think about what we're cooking for dinner, we think about the meat first and then surround it with everything else. If you do it the opposite way, think about the plants and the stuff that's on the plate and think about the meat as a side dish. That may be a better way of looking at it.
What do you think about like the old Atkins and now the new ketogenic diet? How do you feel about that for the heart?
Well, when you look at most diets like that, Atkins, South Beach, keto, what do they have in common? Getting rid of all the starch products, right? So
they all go carb, yeah.
Right, all of them have that in common. Atkins tells you to eat as much fat as you want to. Keto says do more protein, but when you look at some of the proteins or the fats in the keto, you have to be careful and not getting the products that have a lot of saturated fats. So there are 3 types of fats in there, and they should be sort of equally distributed, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 or less. So the monounsaturated fats and the polyunsaturated fats are generally better. When you start looking at saturated fats, those are more inflammatory things, right? If you had a Twinkie, Twinkies can last forever. You can stick that on your desk, keep it in the package. You might have that Twinkie there for a whole year, right? And it's still fluffy. That's the saturated fat that we're eating. An Oreo cookie, right? That can last forever. And those are the saturated fats. The harder, the fat around the meats of a steak, that's more saturated. It will stay solid at room temperature. Whereas you start seeing some of the more monounsaturated or quote healthy fats like omega-3s, those are better. So as you're starting to look at keto diets and keto protein, keto shakes, try to get those that have the less, should be less than 1/3 of your overall fats should be from saturated fats. That's going to be important. So there are good fats, bad fats. The common denominator amongst most of those are avoiding the simple carbs that we just talked about. And initially the keto diet started with kids that had epilepsy. So they would put these kids in the ketosis, meaning changing the acid balance in their bodies, thinking that would actually starve their body and help decrease epilepsy. So that's where that initially came from. Ketosis.
It worked though, right? That's my understanding from the study of work.
Yeah, and you have to look at what you're doing. You know, as a diabetic, that may be a little more dangerous, right? So you don't want your body going in ketosis if you have brittle diabetes as well. But I think a blend is a good thing. You will lose weight if you stick to any one of those. But again, the thing you have to look out for are the saturated fats in those things.
What about now that you do a lot of pairing with, like either some type of pretty regimented diet, like say ketogenic diet, or like the zone diet, and they do intermittent fasting. What's your stance on intermittent fasting? You think it's good for us? Should we do it?
Well, I think like anything, it's one, if you're not trained to go out and do jiu-jitsu and you jump in there with a purple belt every time, that's probably not a good idea, right? So if you're going to go into a diet, you don't want to go do 9 hours of fasting or not keeping yourself hydrated. If you have you're doing fasting but you're still trying to work out, so you have to plan those things. If you're working out hard and you're trying to incorporate intermittent fasting, your body's probably not going to like that too much, because you do need some sugars, you do need some fuel for your body. So I think there's a role for intermittent fasting. There are a lot of cultures that don't eat 3 meals a day.
Yep.
Americans, we like to do everything over the top.
Yep.
So when you look at Muslims, when they're in their Ramadan phase, they fast, and they do it with purpose. Baptist churches, they do these fasts called the Daniel fast, or throughout a certain part of the month, and they forget what the purpose of the fast is. It's not about just losing weight. It's a mental process, and it's about actually purity and being more holistic, and not to do it just in that 1 month. It's to take what you've learned and can do it and continue doing it for the rest of your life. So I said a lot to say, I think they're good in the right setting, and you just have to know what you're doing with the particular types of fasts and how long you're doing them.
I agree with you 100%. And I was looking back, it's like thousands of year-old technique that been using to cleanse our bodies, and I think that we forget that. It's almost like 3 meals a day. It's a construction of our society so that our restaurants can stay in business, and if people keep consuming, everybody eats. You got to eat all the time. I'm concerned, because then what happens when somebody has to skip a meal? They're like, "Oh my God, this is crazy!" Like, what
they feel like they're starving to death, right?
Yeah, you're not starving. You're not gonna die.
I'm like, it's only been 3 hours, dude. So chill out.
You're not gonna
Drink
die.
some water.
Hey, it's funny what I tell people when they're like, "Oh, what kind of diet should I go on?" I go, "Why don't you just eat less and don't eat so much throughout the day?" And they're like, "Oh my God, but I'm gonna die." And I go, "You can go 30 days before you die from starvation. You'll be okay for 5 hours."
Right. And hydration is key, right?
Yep.
So
Water, not coffee.
I get these big bottles of smart water. I mean, I just like the taste. I'm not endorsing it or anything like that. You can get your container to make sure you put a liter in. I get a bag of lemons and squeeze some lemon juice in there. It does a couple of things. One is helping to clean your palate as well as your digestive system, but it also gives you that sense of satiety or being full. So you're not thinking about eating. It's a mental process. Once you start thinking about food, that whole chain of events called neuroplasticity. This, right? So changing that whole mindset, it's like a computer, correct? That, if you reboot the computer, it's going to do what it knows to do. Unless you pull out all the viruses from that computer, reboot it, clean it out, it's going to keep doing what it's doing. So you have to reboot your brain and your mindset on how you eat, how you live. A quick question that I always ask people and my patients: how many adult animals drink milk?
Just us.
Humans, right?
You see cows going by their mothers as adults drinking the milk, and they're
us.
bigger than we are. What about goats? What about giraffes or elephants? Right? Milk does a body good. That was a wonderful campaign.
Yep.
That you can only get vitamin D from drinking milk. You can get vitamin D from a whole host of processes, and the milk proteins can cause some allergies. I don't know about you guys. I never knew anyone that had a peanut allergy when I was younger.
Yeah.
You could bring peanut butter and jelly sandwiches to school or eat peanuts. Nowadays, you have to have, I was asked when my daughter was in middle school, we have these field days where everyone's out. It's like, oh, doc, can you watch over the medicines? And so they would bring in bags of EpiPens. And, for all these kids that have peanut allergies or different allergies. So something has happened to the body over time in the processes that we do. So I say that to say about the milk. So, the things that we eat, the things that we do, the things that, we say and mentally buy into can affect us one way or the other.
Now, I've also heard that it could be from vaccines too. Huh? Have you heard that at all about some allergies that children are developing now from taking vaccines?
Well, vaccine's a tricky one too.
Lewis is smiling. He knows
I know.
I'm holding back.
I'm gonna cut you off about the vaccines and the and the COVID virus and putting chips in too. So I'm gonna.
Oh, good. You're gonna chip us.
I'm gonna go cut that off. It's possible. But I don't know what a vaccine does. Why do they give you a vaccine? It wants your body to produce an immune response, right? You hear people that say they get sick after they get a flu vaccine, right? Because now you've introduced something was live, but it's killed. The shells of the influenza virus, the DNA or the RNA, so that now your body can recognize it. It produces its own immune response. So now it's attacking your body when you have that. So a lot of people do, quote, get sick after they get a vaccine. But I'm not sure. I'll just say that. There's certainly a possibility, but before we go down the COVID road and immunizations, things don't overnight in the immunology. You still have to get yearly influenza vaccine. That's not something that's going to completely make your body immune, where that's different from the hepatitis B vaccine, right? You get a hepatitis B vaccine, and that's supposedly something that carries you for a while, and you may get a booster, or the vaccines that you get as a kid, or the hepatitis, or the shingles vaccine. So they're all different in how they work and what they're supposed to do inside the body.
I got a book now. I'm just reading on vaccines because I got a 5-month-old daughter. So, and then the first thing they did when she came out was they gave her a shot. I was like, oh my God, like, yeah. Hold on a second, what's going on? I haven't held my daughter yet. You taking her to give her a shot? But so I as a parent need to make sure I get more information on things so that I can.
You do, and it's tricky because it becomes political, right? You want your kid eventually to go to school. They won't let her go to school if they don't have those shot records, or so all of those things are checks and balances on how the system is actually set up.
That's how they're going to get us to take the COVID vaccine. That's another story though, but just go back to COVID.
I'm going to have to wait on that. The jury's way out.
Yeah. What are you seeing in the hospitals? Like, I see some of the cases, slight uptick in some cases, not a whole lot, but you're in DC. Like, what are you seeing on the ground level?
Well, our health system has been, really good with updating us on a daily basis on what the numbers are. So you have patients that are positive, then you have patients under investigation. So just before I came over here, I had to go into a room. I'm going to have to tell my wife this. That I had to actually go into a room that someone was just admitted and they're under, quote, evaluation and isolation for COVID before they get 2 negative tests to come back. And, I have to gown up, I'll put my N95 on first, then I put another mask over top of that. And within the hospital, new guidelines in our health system is actually wearing face shields, because there's some thought that it can be coming through the mucous membranes and the glasses aren't enough, because it's not open, it's not sealed enough. So you're probably starting to hear people talk more about face shields as well.
They've been talking about goggles.
Yeah, be on the lookout for all that. So you hear code words that someone's thinking about all these other things. Okay, we've seen it this way, or we have been looking this way. We started out saying, oh, you don't need to wear a mask. That never really made sense to me, because it's an aerosolized thing. The 6 feet, you do that, but it's not like this. It's going to go 6 feet in front of you and drop to the ground, right? You have stuff that's still in the air and floating around. So, someone does something. If you're walking behind them, 6 feet behind them, and they did a big sneeze and you inhale all of that, just like influenza, that's always a possibility. So first thing I would say, always protect yourself, and be more hyper vigilant than just baseline vigilant. And everyone can get it. Don't listen to politics over science. Everyone can get it. There's finding out that kids, although they may not have the same symptoms, they can carry the same burden in their sinuses as adults can. So they can be now the vectors or the spreaders of the disease when they're asymptomatic. That's like the Trojan horse, right? You see this Trojan horse coming, you don't know what's about to hit you. And once it's inside the gates, it's too late. Already, the Trojan horse opens up and you have people like your background shooting arrows at you. So you have droplets coming at you. Those are the arrows that are shooting at you. So if I could say anything and people hear it, just to take it seriously. My father-in-law out in California had it. He was 80 years old and was on a ventilator for 7 days, got off, aspirated, meaning fluid went back down. He was on another 7 days, but he's one of the lucky ones at 80 years old. He didn't have a lot of other medical conditions. He's at home recovering now. I have friends that have it, and so it's not something made up. It's not fake news. It's not, that's the worst thing to do, is politicize something like this.
Seems like they're politicizing everything these days, just to kind of make sure that, we fight amongst each other and no one has any kind of conversations.
Yeah.
It was crazy. I was listening to the news a few days ago, or I guess last week, they were talking about sending the kids back to school. And there were like 2 days and then a cleaning day and 2 days. And my wife and I were like, this sounds crazy. Like, how are you going to expose all these teachers and not care? And then, DeVos comes out and she's all like, oh, only 0.5% will die. It's a crazy.
What if you're that 0.5%?
Huh?
What if you're in that 0.5%?
Yeah, exactly. Like, what a terrible situation. But they canceled school. So that's that.
It's all virtual learning for the next, till when? Like
At
November?
least for my kids in DC, they said no school at least till January. It's all going to be distance learning.
How do your kids feel about it?
I mean, my kids are cool, man. They're all just chilling, hanging out all day. I'm trying to get them back exercising because they're becoming a little lazy. But
yeah, it's an interesting world. We have three. I call it the trifecta. We have a pandemic. We have a lot of social injustice all over the country and the world, and we have an economic collapse.
Yep.
Right. So if you're putting all those three together, they intermingle. When you look at, they keep talking about, higher rates in ethnic minority groups. How can you social distance in the high-rise projects? How can you do that? You go in and out of the elevator. No one's there cleaning an elevator. A lot of people have those same high risk factors that we normally. I'm old school. I still keep my pager too.
what?
Look, because this pager is more reliable than my phone. I could be in the basement of the hospital and my phone don't go off, but the pager will always go off.
I remember in high school, like I got my first pager. I was like, I feel so important now, like a doctor.
Yeah. People look at you like you're an old school drug dealer. He must be with the Asian gang.
Yeah. Nope, just my mom. So it's interesting though, because then now you're also having to contend. So if you have COVID, or if you think you got symptoms, what should you do? You go get tested. Where do you get tested? What's the process?
Well, let me pull up this number. DC actually has a number that you can call. Hold on 1 second. Let me pull it.
Louis, can you post it up on our?
One has it in Spanish and well, both you can get it. So one is 855-363-0333. The other one in Spanish is 844-796-2797. So they have them around the city. They've had them at fire stations. You might have seen long lines outside of fire station, like the one up on 14th Street. They're getting COVID testing. There's one I know right over off South Dakota Avenue. You see those tents by that old UDC building. It's a school right when you turn on to South Dakota Avenue. So they have several across the city. And the issue becomes is the backlog, how long it takes for you to get testing. There are some rapid testing, but they're really, limited in who actually gets them and who has access to them. So if you get a test and it takes you a week to 10 days to get it back, if you're not social isolating in those week to 10 days while you're waiting, it may almost mean nothing by the time you get it back. Because if you've gone back out to ride the metro, or you've gone into a building where you're working and a lot of people aren't social distancing or wearing their mask, it makes it tricky, right? Because, if you just got exposed today and you went and got your test later that afternoon or that morning, it may be negative, right? Because your body hasn't started to produce the antigens, or the antigens meaning the particles from the virus hadn't started replicating enough to be detected. So it's important to look at your symptoms, the duration, close contacts. If you think you've had some symptoms at all, then go get it checked. They're more likely to get them back pretty quick if you've gone through emergency room, or some prompt cares may have access to quicker results and quicker turnaround.
The quick test is what? I get that in like 24 hours? Or you
Well,
think?
some can be done actually in hour 45 minutes, but those are very rare.
Okay.
In the hospital setting, you had to be an NBA player or a baseball player to get those.
MMA
Or work in the White House, because they get those turned around every day, right? So people that come in contact with the president, they have to get tested, and that's how they find out all these people that are now getting positive and things like that. Sad to hear about Herman Cain, who was at the Oklahoma rally, posting, no mask. The governor of Oklahoma, both of them contracted COVID, and Herman Cain just recently died of complications of coronavirus.
It's kind of a crazy time. Also, our healthcare system is very expensive for some that might not be able to get to the testing. Now, if they can go to these sites, how does that?
That should be free if you're a DC resident.
Okay.
They've been closing them because of the weather, which is
but just keep calling around and see if they have. I mean, it's just like polling places. You start off with a lot of them, and then they start shrinking or contracting based on the overall numbers of the city. So they track the hospitals around DC, Northern Virginia, surrounding Maryland, and look at the actual cases. And as the case load goes down, then they can look at sort of concentrating those testing sites.
Cut them off a little bit.
Still there, Doc?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we lost your audio for a second.
Okay. I said that, I think the city looks at those, the numbers, the numbers in DC, Northern Virginia, surrounding Maryland, and as they start plateauing or decreasing, that's when they start contracting the number of sites that you can actually go to. But
I don't understand right now we're kind of stuck in phase 2. Do you see if and you're also working with the mayor, I understand too, yes? So
no, they just invited me to come out and talk about this program that the American Heart Association had, was called Don't Die of Doubt. And she wanted to get the message out of telling people, because we're seeing a decrease in the number of people coming in with heart attacks, strokes, chest pain, because people are scared to go to the emergency room. And one of the programs that the Heart Association is actually doing is called Don't Die of Doubt. Don't stay at home and die of a heart attack or a stroke, because all those things, you should go into the hospital and let people know that it's actually safer going into emergency rooms now than it was, say, a month or 2 ago, because now they have different areas that they're putting people that are suspected and those that have other things like heart attack and stroke. So you can go into many ERs and it looks so eerily deserted. Our hospital, before, you had to see beds lined up because it was so packed with people that come in with all kinds of things. But now folks aren't going. They're not, they don't want to come into the doctor's office, so we have to adjust on that as well. So that's the process of that.
Isn't that also affecting the medical system from like an economic standpoint? If people aren't coming in, some doctors have private practice, they're not able to see patients. Like, how's it at your house right now? Is it empty?
Well, no, it's still pretty full with, still things still happen. People still have heart attacks. People still, they started opening up surgeries, a few weeks ago. They cut off all the elective cases. Now everyone's getting screened with COVID before they come in for their surgical procedures. But it certainly had an impact on the healthcare system in a big way because it's sort of a trickle down. Patients aren't coming into the office, so we really jumped on across the country with the telemedicine like we're doing now and seeing patients virtually. And I think a lot of the particular seniors, they're very appreciative of being able to just do their visit from their living room. Some I've seen people that were in their bed doing telemedicine visits. One guy did his telemedicine visit from an ER bed. One guy called and he made an appointment at 8 o'clock in the morning and we called him. He said, "Hey, could you tell him to call back a little later? I'm still sleeping." So we're going through this process and it's a trickle down effect, right? Because if you're not seeing as many patients, you're not doing as many studies, you still have to look at your staff and your employees. There are cutbacks along the way. There's redeployment for people that aren't busy in one area. So if you're a surgeon, you're not doing surgery. So now they have to retrain you. Maybe you go to the emergency room. People haven't done emergency room work in them forever, but they can, do the basic and helping in places that are of need. But that's slowly starting to come back as numbers go down, and we're doing it very slow on purpose because not only do we have to think about our patients, but we have to think about our staff. We have to think about ourselves. We have to think about our families because when you interact with people, it doesn't stop here. It goes to wherever you're going. So imagine one person with COVID. Potentially 10 people could be involved, right? They go home, they live in a place where they're, multi-generational members in their home. So there's 10 people. Then each of those 10, if 5 of them are working outside the house and they can't afford the luxury of telecommuting, so they actually have to get on a bus, so they have to go to a work site, then they're interacting with another 10. And you see how that's exponential. As it goes along and makes it almost impossible to always track and find out how it's gonna go.
Yeah, that's one of the metrics that they're looking to do, right? Is increase the contact tracing in
Right.
DC. But for as far as the reported cases, I mean, we're like what 60, 70 cases a day, something like this. Well, what's it going to take for us to get to phase 3? What's your opinion on that one?
I think if they see a trend, I don't know what her days are, or the Department of Health director, she's very, very shrewd, very smart woman. I think when they look at a certain number of days based on what they hear from the CDC, they'll start doing that. But it's tricky in our area because that's why we call the DMV. We have fluid borders. So people that may be crazy in Virginia that aren't social distancing, won't wear a mask, they work in DC, they come get their entertainment in DC. Maryland, they come in and get their entertainment in DC, come to restaurants. It's really hard to for one city or state to do something when the other states aren't doing the same thing.
Yep.
So that's why you see in other countries, they've seen flattening. China, they're probably, a small percentage of what we are, right? Because they're not looking at Wuhan and letting them make their own decisions, or Hong Kong and make their own decisions, or some of the other areas. They made a decision for the whole country. In America, we like to talk about our First Amendment rights and we need to do this and that, but we're not, that's for us. That's not about grandma or someone else that you could be actually affecting. So this thing may go on for quite a long time because we have this rinky-dink system of let this governor do this and let that governor sue the mayor for wanting to do that in their own city when they have hotspots in Atlanta, and the governor is going to sue the the mayor for imposing mask laws.
Isn't that crazy? Isn't that
So that's ridiculous, right? So
when
you have Atlanta, you have Decatur, you have Stone Mountain, you have Forsyth County, and suppose everyone's doing their own thing, their own Yahoo thing, right? How are you going to contain anything by doing that?
All this calamity too is being funded by our tax dollars. So this is, just remember that all these people, they're working for us.
And it's crazy. You mentioned the DMV, and it's like Maryland and Virginia, they're like phase 3, and it's like the Wild West out there. Like some of these martial arts schools, they're doing whatever they want, and they're pretending to, I don't know what they're doing, but I feel sometimes like we're the only ones really following the rules. And even if we're following the rules, I look at the numbers, but I only look for DC, and it has started going up, but it looks like the uptrend is slowing down. But I don't even know if I believe that anymore. Like, I don't even know if I believe these numbers anymore, because you know how they close test sites. And then my mom was in Arizona, and she lives with my sister. And my sister got the coronavirus, right? So they live together. My mom is sick, and then my mom's like a beast. So she's like, I'm not going to check or anything. I'm just going to take some Tylenol. And then my sister, she feels it. She gets the test. 4 days later, they tell her she got the virus. And then my mom's like, wow, I live in the same house and I'm sick. And they tell her, don't even go take a test. Just stay home. And if you need to, go to the hospital. So that means if my mom had it, her number didn't count.
Right.
So it's like, is that what's happening now? It's like, do these numbers even, I don't even know what to think anymore.
I would say they're probably an underestimation. People that aren't getting tested, right? So can you hear me? Yeah, there are people that aren't being tested. And if you test a population of folks, there may be a percentage that are asymptomatic. So we're only testing necessarily the symptomatic people. And then there are a lot of people that are just carriers, like like kids. So if anything, I would say there's probably an underestimation of the numbers. And I think you guys just keep doing what you're doing, because that's in your heart. You would never want to be on your conscience that you opened up willy-nilly like folks somewhere else and someone had COVID and it was a negative impact. That's just like having MRSA on your mats, right? If you didn't clean your mats and someone got MRSA, which could be a deadly thing, and you're getting these infections that won't go away and it spreads to the next person. So just amplify that times 3 on the MRSA thing, right? You really make sure you clean up based on that. And you don't want anyone that had an open ulcer or lesion or had MRSA coming into the gym, because you know how contagious that is and how poorly treated that can be. So I think just stick with your hearts, man. And, we're all like a family there. It's easier said than done because it's economics as well. Yeah. And you have to look at economics over your heart and common sense.
It's a tough thing, as you said. Like every place is doing its own thing. Virginia, Maryland, get a lot of requests. Like, can we just start doing jiu-jitsu? Can we just start sweating on each other? And these guys are doing it, and it's hard because they are doing it. And
they be posting pictures online, and they be with those clean masks. Like, you ain't wearing no mask. No mask.
Right. And none of them are getting tested. You don't know what's happening after that. I mean, hopefully nothing does happen to him. I was in a car in an Uber for the first time in months, and the guy had his mask down, like this. I had my mask on. He's like, man, I'm young. I play basketball all the time. We play pickup games of 60 people out there waiting. Nothing happened to us. I'm like, that's good. But think about grandma.
Thanks.
Right? Think about grandma or your mom or someone else. If you don't want to think about yourself, think about those other people that could potentially be impacted if you did catch it.
It's very unfortunate that, again, everything gets politicized, because it does put everybody on different sides of the, of the aisle here. But, at the same time, we're all one. We're trying to get through this. Part of me, I live in a multi-generational home. My mom, my grandmother live with me. I got a little one. And
right.
So, there is part of me that has to be very cautious. The other side of being a business owner and trying to run a business and making sure it stays alive is we need to make sure that there's revenue and the doors do stay open. So there's a balancing act. I blame the politicians right now for kind of putting us in this situation because, you know, here we are. We're eagerly awaiting what their new bills are going to be passed and how they're going to affect the people and how much money they're just going to throw on us. That everybody has to run around and collect it. And then, you know, we'll see the aftermath of this in the next couple of years to see, you know, what happens.
Throwing money is not going to work.
Yeah. I mean, it's
cancel rent.
Giving our money.
They need to cancel rent. That's it.
Yeah. You know, people, they had a moratorium on, you know, evictions and things like that, but that's lapsed now, I believe. I don't know if they've overturned it, but there are a lot of people that are struggling out there. And I you know, I don't know if this to be true, but if there was a mandate across the country back in March to wear a mask, would we be at this 150,000 deaths or, you know, almost up to a quarter of the world population of COVID cases in the United States? If Florida with its own country, it'd probably be ranking up in the top 5 or 6.
Florida don't count.
In the world, right? Yeah, you can.
Don't count, man.
Cut it off and let it just flow away.
Texas, Alabama, you know. So I think, you know, I take it serious myself, and it's not a game. And, you know, I hate watching TV and seeing how people are politicizing this thing when people are actually dying. People are dying without, I heard this quote by this guy. He said, people are dying from COVID without COVID. Right? Think about that. There's a physician, an ER physician that committed, or what they're saying now is completed suicide versus committed suicide because of what she was seeing in the emergency rooms and the impact it had. We don't know about the people that are, you know, having mental health breakdowns and committing suicide because of loss of jobs or, you know, all the other things. We don't see the kid that's being abused now because they're at home all the time with their abuser. They can't see it at school because they're not going to school. You know, there are kids that are home getting abused, sexually abused, physically abused. And if they were going to school, then those kids probably could have been evaluated or seen or reported. So those are all the downstream effects of this thing. So, you know, we people in America, we like to be one and two item voters. You know, you can look at the big picture and say, oh, but he likes the environment, so I'm going to vote for this person. Or she likes LGBTQ, so I'm going to vote for that person. Or he likes civil rights. So we don't tend to look at the spectrum of things and make our decisions a lot of times. A lot of the decisions we make are emotional. And I believe we have to look at just common sense, man.
Yep. That being said, that's why I'm looking to vote libertarian. No, I'm kidding. There's libertarian. There's not only two things. There's a third way you can do it. I don't know. I'm listening.
Vote for Lewis. We're going to put you on the ballot, Lewis.
No.
As Lori Porsche, as your defense minister.
Oh, there you go. Well, Dr. Reggie, thank you so much for your time. This has been really educational for all of us. It's also really good to see you because we do miss you at the school. We want to get back to normal training, but you know, as you said, it is what it is at this point. So we do have to be careful. And we really do appreciate you coming on and sharing your knowledge with all the viewers and you know, being an awesome guy. So
thank you. I appreciate it. Love you guys. Stay safe.
Coming back.
All right.
Take it easy.
All right. Take care.